this hopefully, potentially, not hopefully, but potentially is going to end up being a bit of a shorter video than I've been making for these readings, only because I'm starting late and I'm supposed to be quiet in the next half hour per house rules. I might just have to tone it down a bit afterwards because they don't really ever yell at me about anything, but I just like to be respectful. So I don't have anything in mind for this. I just felt today like it's something I should do, and I've kind of been preoccupied energetically, emotionally, and otherwise. So I figured I would just take the time right now to do this. So yeah, I don't have anything in particular that I need to talk about. So I guess we'll just see what comes up in the cards. Okay. The cards are going absolutely wild. Jeez Louise. Okay. I mean, something I could actually work with would be great. Thank you. These cards are jumping all over the place. So there's a lot that wants to come out. A lot that wants to come out. A little bit of a feeling of chaos. I'll give it that. But we aren't getting into that. We're just going to stick with what we have right now, because it's a lot already. Okay. Let's see, I have 1 that came face down and 5 that came face up, so I'm going to set these. How does this want to be set? Okay, I'm not really paying attention, obviously, as I do this. I kind of just go with the energy and then set it up the way that I feel like it should be set up, and then I read it however it gets set up. So this is an interesting setup I should show you. Alright, I'm going to describe each of these as they kind of correlate in position, and then I'm going to bring them all together with this middle card at the end, and I'm not going to know what that is until the end. Okay, so the initial card that we have is the 6 of Wands at top in the upright. Okay, so a sense of achievement, a sense of confidence, of a sort of success moving forward. There's like a pride moving forward. There's, like I said, like a confidence. There's a team. All of these different skills are already kind of honed in on, and the movement forward is fairly direct. Coming in, I don't know, have I seen this card before? I don't know if I've seen this card before in this deck. Maybe I've seen it once. I think I saw it one other time in a reading. Also a 6. Dude, this is weird. Oh, that's wild. Okay, so the 6 of Wands obviously is represented by a 6. Here's the 6 of Pentacles. No. Yeah. Where's the... Oh, yeah. Okay, here's the 6 of Pentacles that came in the reverse. Okay, and so in the upright, it's kind of generosity. Examples, not examples, what's the word I'm looking for? Reflects, whatever, I can't think of the right word. But it speaks on generosity, giving to the less impoverished, finding a balance between one's personal wealth and how one gives of oneself. And it kind of has this concept of charity and, yeah, being quite charitable, right? Like kind of putting other people's needs not above one's own, but prioritizing other people's needs. And then there's the Six of Swords. So we have 3 sixes right off the bat, which is beautiful. It's so cool. I don't know if I've ever seen that before, like that. However, this 6 is in the reverse. But it is interesting because I noticed as I was looking at the fact that those were all 6s, I looked and noticed that the bottom 2 cards don't even have numbers. So it's still significant. I'll figure out exactly why this card is in reverse in a minute. The 6 of Swords. So we have the 6 of Wands, right? Being a sign of like pride. Not pride, like pride like in a good way, not like in some negative way. Pride like you're proud of yourself, like you've accomplished a lot, you already know what it is that you're working with, you're headed into a sense of reward. Where the 6 of Swords kind of has this sense of like responsibility behind it, taking responsibility for those closest to you, for your family, for those that are dependent on you, and moving forward into calm waters, but moving from a place of struggle and then moving forward. So interesting too, because both of these cards kind of similarly reflect one another, and the fact that like the main person in the card isn't looking, they're looking off to the distance, there's these other people involved, and then like the Wands and the Swords are very similar. But obviously the 6 of Wands has much more of a sense of victory, and that's the one that ended up on top. So then this middle is kind of, it almost feels like it's probably potentially moving from the base energy, which I'm going to get to last now, through to this sense of victory at the end. So we have 2, this middle card that I haven't turned over yet is in between these 2. So it feels like these are technically oppositional in the initial appearance of them, or the initial like experience of them. Ultimately, they're going to be balanced out through this middle card, and everything's going to come together through this middle card. But as it stands, it would seem that there is a sort of so there's an idea of victory in one's head, an idea of, I know what it's going to take now, I know what I have, I'm moving forward in that direction. But in the current is this dichotomy and kind of conflict between taking responsibility for dependence and truly not taking responsibility for dependence, right? Like not having to give of oneself in order to feel valid. I'm excited to get to this middle card because I think that it's going to end up kind of better explaining this, which this is a conflict that I've been having, right? And I was just talking about it with a friend today, where it's like, I have always been someone who considers myself like highly moralistic, despite the fact that I'm also quite hedonistic. I was raised with high morals and standards, and those things and that sense of discipline that was instilled in me has always served me greatly into my maturity. And it's something that I hold true to and that I hold close to myself, right? I hold it very dearly, as this sense of discipline and stoicism, and, not necessarily catering to one's own desires, caring for one's needs, but not catering to one's desires, in lieu of an awareness of one's ultimate responsibility to the world in which we exist, and to my society and my community and all of those things. So what I'm moving into in the next phase of my life is to truly just do what makes me happy. I've done a lot of work to care for others and to make everybody else happy and to make sure everybody else is okay. And I have compromised myself and sacrificed myself and given of myself for years and years to completely defected myself, like put my, own identity on the back burner in order to care for others and to care for the world around me. And I don't regret that. I'm very thankful that I have that instilled deeply within me, and that's always been a driving force for me. However, I've become imbalanced in that when I realized I'd become imbalanced, I started working on the process of removing myself from people-pleasing qualities. This tendency to compromise myself for the sake of others. It's one thing to sacrifice yourself because you so choose to, but ultimately compromising yourself isn't benefiting the grand experience of things the way that you might tend to want to believe that it does, or that the ego would trick you into believing that it does, because you yourself are part of the greater whole. And if you aren't properly cared for, if you're constantly compromising yourself, at the very least, even if through all of the compromising that I did, I was able to gain this innate strength to be able to overcome so much. What I also did was left this sense of inequality for the fact that I can't expect others to compromise themselves. I wouldn't want to. I don't want people to have to compromise themselves any more than the reality already asks of us. You know what I mean? Because I do think that it's something that's innate in our human experience. But I think that there's this point where I was doing the savior complex thing of compromising myself to a degree where if becomes the standard that I'm setting in the world, compromising myself, sacrificing myself, becoming crucified to the world for the sake of everybody else, that's already been done. And what it has built in the world, or at least what it's come to, is an extreme codependency, which is not healthy. And it's something that I've talked about before, where it's one thing to be given to forms of religion, for instance, in order to come to know oneself truly and to be able to actively engage in oneself rightly and to be able to stand on one's own 2 feet with a sense of actual durability. But that's ultimately not going to stay that way if you continue to use a crutch past the point that you need it. And we have this society now where people are so set on these crutches that they have created for themselves or used for themselves in order to feel some type of way that people don't want to give it up. People don't want to give that up. That's what they long for. That's what they vote for. That's what they're hoping for. And everybody's waiting on an external savior, and that's why so many people are given to all these different types of addictions and all these different types of toxic relationships and all these different types of systems of control that don't ultimately support their highest good. It's just comfort and convenience based, right? That's all the the effects of, that's all the consequences of this concept of having an external savior. Like I said, there was a time and place where that served a purpose, but we're beyond that now. Now the tides are changed, the tables are turning, we're expected to shift into a new paradigm, and there is a new world at hand, and it's our responsibility to either step into that with grace and faith, or to keep clinging to these dead concepts that are ultimately leading us astray and leading us into, like I said, codependent relationships and behaviors and concepts of self that ultimately take away from our connection to our highest power. So I struggle a lot with those things because I have always had this concept of generosity, which I still agree with, but to the extent of compromising myself and then having this sense of responsibility for others, where ultimately if I were really caring for myself, those things would kind of just come hand in hand, right? I struggled with this for a long time. When I had dogs, I prioritized my dogs over myself to such a degree that I ended up not being able to give them the lives that they deserved. Because instead of taking 2 months of, like, when I was living with my ex, I could have kept my dogs at my ex's house. They would have been safe and cared for properly. And I mean, and even it had offered so that I could go take care of myself, so that I could get myself in a better place. But I had this concept that them being away from me wasn't ultimately the best thing for them. And I mostly was just unwilling to make that sacrifice because I didn't want to be away from them, because I didn't know how I was going to survive without them. And without taking proper care of myself in order to make sure that I could take proper care of them, they ended up suffering. And that's something that I have to carry with me for the rest of my life. It's not something you want to do to yourself. It's not something I want to see reflected in the grand scheme of things, right? So I'm coming to this point now where I've worked extremely hard, and like the work I chose to do was work where I'm caring for others. But like even the last job that I had to come to that point where like I could have stayed and continued that job that wasn't paying me sufficiently and was asking way more of me emotionally than I surely had to give, because I was compromising myself in order to do as good as I was doing. I did a great job. I did a great job at that job, but I also wasn't caring for myself. And so now I've taken this time to truly care for myself, and I'm like still working out these routines and rituals in order to keep myself balanced. And, you know, like that to me has become the most important thing, because I can't keep giving of myself for these different things. It helps for a time, but ultimately what I saw in the last position that I had was what I've seen in the grand scheme of things, which is that if I do so good at this job because I'm willing to compromise myself more than anyone else would be willing to compromise themselves, I am not setting a good example. I'm not creating a sense of sustainability. And those are the things I care about the most. I'm doing a good job. I'm getting the work done. I could do that for a period of time. And I did it, and it did what it needed to do. But like, ultimately, that's not a sustainable practice. There's times for that. There's places for that. There's also places to take a break and take a rest and focus on myself and make sure that I'm okay and detox myself from a whole bunch of the bullshit, right? There needs to be a balance of those things. And unless I'm constantly like spending 2 to 4 months doing a specific type of job and then have to take another 2 to 4 months just to recuperate from that, which ultimately isn't the most sustainable thing for me, I want to be able to do a more active work. But I'm literally only one person, and I'm only capable of so much. So like, there comes a point where it's necessary for me to maintain this balance and to be able to recognize it and to stop trying to be a savior and to just take responsibility for what is mine, right? But at the same time, like I said, like there's this dichotomy here where like it isn't just forsaking everybody else either. For this past month, I kind of really did need to do that, just because of how much I'd put myself into others. But ultimately, that's not going to fulfill my greatest goals. It doesn't fulfill my deepest inner person to be completely detached from the rest of the world. I'm a human being, and human beings aren't islands. We need a sense of community, and we need to add to these things. And I have so much to add to the world at large, and that's what I'm trying to do with my life. So, like, it's not helpful to put myself in these positions where I have to have so much isolation just to be okay, right? It's a balance for every individual, and it's about the individual knowing themselves enough to know what's right for them. Okay, so those are those. Okay, so then we move into, we have the Knight of Cups in the upright, and we have the King of Cups in the reverse. And it's weird because these two just happen to be down here together. So like, it's a weird contrast because in what I was in comparison to what I was just saying, right? It's kind of like when you're in a plane crash, when your plane is crashing and you're trying to help everybody, what you're told is to put on your gas mask, your oxygen mask first, because if you don't, you'll end up passing out before you can even help anybody. If somebody else passes out, you can put an oxygen mask on them and they can be resuscitated, but you can't be resuscitated. I mean, you can, but like if you're not, you know what I mean? Like the thing that you're supposed to do is take care of yourself first and foremost so that you can take care of others, especially in dire situations. And, you know, right now we're in this point of stasis. Like, it's not like that all across the world, and things are going to continue to get more and more heated here. But right now, especially, like, we're just on the brink of the elections. So, like, things are about to get kind of wild. But in this moment, we're in a point of stasis. And in that stasis, it's extremely important that we focus on what it is that we need to make sure that we're properly cared for, so that when shit hits the fan, we can be there and we can actually do our greatest work, right? So that's kind of what this moves into too, where like these two are reflective of the dichotomy of trying to find a balance within yourself in order to know how much of myself I'm supposed to give, how much I need to give myself, where to find those balances. But then that's moving down into, you know, the ultimate, like, to give of oneself despite one's own comfort. The King of Cups is very gentle and strong, but like compassionate, kind of easygoing, able to maneuver all of the waves of emotions. In the reverse, it's kind of this like, that's not going to be the state that we're about to be in. Like, we're not going to be in a place of comfort and convenience, and that's the importance of being able to know what it is that we're carrying forward, and to be able to have that to carry forward, and to be able to balance those things out for ourselves in a way that is functional and that actually leads to a sort of success, so that we can maneuver through what is ahead. And what is ahead? I'm going to need clarity on it. Clarity? I don't know what I just said. The Five of Wands in reverse. The Five of Wands in the upright, to me, is like a sense of conflict, but also like playing, and like the point of it is to learn together. So like there's a sense of camaraderie. It's kind of like wrestling with your friends in order to learn how to be more powerful yourself, right? In the reverse, and as we relate it to these other cards, chances are friendships are going to be at least put on hold for a time, if not completely broken, because of certain beliefs. Certain goals and aspirations are going to have to be left behind for the sake of a greater peace and sustainability, and kind of looking into a different direction than maybe one anticipated in order to build what is sustainable. There's going to be these two sides of the economy that become extremely evident. And there's almost going to be like a cutoff, some sort of cutoff when it comes to charity. There's going to be new community, a new sense of community that comes up, where everyone is kind of responsible for themselves in a different way than they've really ever been. It's going to be harder to rely on these, like, these different like aspects of society that we've been identifying ourselves by. There's a word that was in my head, but I lost it. This is so strange, but it's kind of like there's a lot of movement. There's a lot of movement, but it's really all in one direction. The importance of maintaining a sense of faith and stuff too. I talked about this, I think, in the last read, if not in the last couple of them, or no, maybe a little bit in the last one, but for sure in the couple before that. That it's important to keep the faith because we're coming into this period of seeming chaos. The chaos has actually already been had, and the shaking away of the chaff from the wheat, like that's already been being done too. But it's like, okay, I can't promote this movie because it was fucking ridiculous, but like the movie Sausage Party, if you happen to see it, it's that adult animated, like, Seth Rogen type movie. I'm not recommending it, but if you saw it, you'll understand what I'm talking about. All of these foods, all these different foods in a grocery store are the main characters, right? And they're looking forward to the gods, who are the people shopping at the grocery store, to come and take them to heaven, because there's this concept that they're all trapped in the grocery store, and that as soon as they're purchased, they are moved out of the grocery store into the wild blue yonder, because they don't know what happens to all this food once it gets to a person's house. They're just making these assumptions that that must be what heaven is, you know, and so they're all awaiting this concept. Meanwhile, like, we know what happens to food when you purchase it at the grocery store, what happens to it when you bring it home. You consume it. The Bible itself, like, it's so terrible, but like the Bible itself even talks about how in the end of days, those that are meant for God will be received unto him, and those that aren't meant for God will be cast away into the fire. And that, how does it put it? That they'll be spewed out of his mouth and then cast into the fire. That anybody who's lukewarm, anybody who doesn't meet these certain standards will be spewed out of his mouth. So there is and like, then all the rest of them will be taken into his fold. So like, there's this concept of being completely consumed by God at the end of days, right? And like in the movie, like it goes from being all like hunky-dory and everything's all silly and they have all these fantasies and everybody's all like, despite like the issues they have amongst themselves, ultimately there's this concept of something so much greater that they're all kind of clinging to. And then, you know, a whole bunch of these groceries get bought and they get brought back to a person's house, and then they start getting like pulled out of their packaging and pulled apart and sliced and diced and boiled and brewed and mixed together with all of their like body parts and stuff like that. And it's just like absolute chaos, and it's just like insane. This is why I don't recommend the movie. It's incredibly fucked up. But the concept is pretty brilliant to me. Especially because energetically, that's what we're seeing. I try to watch this stupid I'm always watching like B horror movies. Sometimes I quite enjoy them for the weird types of philosophy and psychology aspects that are in them, right? No matter how poorly written or acted they are. This one I could not watch. It was terrible. But the concept of it got me because of other personal things, but it's called 13-13-13, and it's about like essentially like a end of the world type scenario where, like, how does it put it, like after the end of the Mayan calendar, everybody's left to live in a world that's just like purely demonic essentially, and like everybody pretty much just, it's like a dog eat dog world, right? It's a bad movie, don't watch it, it's not good. But that concept is powerful because that's kind of what we're looking at to a degree. Now, it depends on your beliefs, obviously, and I don't recommend falling victim to concepts that create evil or that sustain a sense of evil or that give power to a sense of evil. I'm all about focusing on things that are truly positive and that give the benefit to the individual, to the whole, to the highest power of things, not these low vibrations. Don't give energy to it. However, We are moving into a time, it doesn't matter who wins the election. It doesn't matter. Any of that stuff doesn't actually matter. It's all part of the same system that's already happening, and it's already been preset what's going to happen. It doesn't matter which puppets are playing which role. The storyline is still there. And we're moving into a time of, like I said, like seeming chaos, where like people will be more than ever given to their own devices, and like it will appear a lot of different ways. But it's not bad. You have to hold out faith that it's not bad, that it's part of the process, and that those that are called to good will ultimately remain in good, and that they will sustain, and that those that aren't will be cast away. It's just the final process and the final working out, and it's kind of like that. Like let's say I kind of fumble a card and then drops on the table, but then falls off on my lap, and then falls from my lap onto the floor. I wait until it's fully stopped moving, until I pick it up, and I pick it up in the position that it falls, and that's how I read it, right? It's kind of that same concept where, like, the card itself could have been anything. It has all the potential in the world to be, it has all the potential in the world to be many things. Of course, it's based on the DNA of an individual, who they were born to, what time they were born into, exactly who they're going to be, but ultimately everybody's initially born with this capacity to be able to become whatever they want to become, to be able to make all these choices, to be able to respond to their experiences however they choose to. But how the cards fall and how a person ends up at their end that's what it is. And obviously that has so much to do with the way that I tend to do these things, right? But that's part of the cards falling, right? It's that we don't get to choose our circumstances. We only have the power to choose. We don't even have the power to choose like how we fall necessarily. So much of it's just about truly embracing ourselves, to be honest. But we also we have the power to choose how we respond to those things. Just like I have the power in of myself to be able to read things no matter how they fall. I can still read things and put them in a specific place. So that's the time we're moving into. That's the importance of knowing ourselves. That's the importance of being true to ourselves, being true to our highest power, listening to our highest calling, following those things, no matter how hard it is, no matter what you have to give up, in faith that it's going to be worth it in the end. That's the hardest thing. I've been called to so many things I would have never imagined being called to, and it didn't, so many things haven't felt like this can't be right. Why would you lead me here? This seems like a terrible place. This seems like it's only going to bring out the worst in me. Sometimes that has been truly essential to my greatest empowerment and enlightenment, being brought to my lows. There's no way around it. I'm still being put through that process because ultimately, if I haven't integrated every single aspect of who I am as an individual, I'm not truly genuine. And that's the most important thing. That is the most important thing. That's why even the most crooked of crooked, end up having some respect in comparison to the fakest of the fake. Because it depends on how genuine they are. It depends on how genuine you are. If you really are just the worst person in the world, the genuineness will still carry you further than trying to be a fake person. Maybe I am the worst person in the world. I know that I'm not. I know that I'm not because in my heart, I actually really enjoy things that are good and good for people and healthy. But that's not everybody. And that's just the way of the world. You know what I mean? It's not for me to dictate that or try to define that as evil. It dictates and defines itself. Not my problem. My problem and responsibility is me. Okay, so that's where we're at. That's what we're moving into. We do have victory on the top. So so much of it's just about keeping this faith, being able to recognize and see. And I think that's where the 666 comes in too. It's being able to see the light in darkness, being able to focus on what you know to be true, even despite all of the seeming evil that continues to pervade through this reality. Why is this one upside down? Well, an upside down 6 is a 9, but an upside down Roman numeral 6 is technically a 4. 4 is is a completion. 9 is also a completion, is endings and new beginnings. 10 is actually definitive of total completion into a new beginning, the start of a new cycle, because it's the end of another cycle. But 9s are like the door that lead to the end and to the beginning. And 4 is what comes directly after we've established a cycle. It's everything coming full circle. Hold on. I'm getting like this really deep message. I got the image of, if you've seen it before and it's used in some occult practices, the number 666, but the circle part of it is all connected, and then the lines are just coming off of it, right? And you'll see like it's kind of like the Google symbol, which is, it's an Ouroboros. That's a sign of karmic cycles. It's a sign of humanism mixed with determinism. And seeing the 5 of Wands in the reverse reminded me of global brotherhoods, secret societies and such, having a predetermined like, what's it called, like blueprint for world wars in order to bring about this ultimate goal. Which then in duality offers the human capacity to choose what they love and to give themselves to it and to fight for what they love. And the balance of that and being able to accept a sense of not being in control. So many people are afraid of the future and what it will bring, and all of these prophecies of a one world government and all these different types of things. And like, you know, as raised in like conspiracy theories. But like I said in my theory of everything, like I personally believe that all of this is a manifest destiny, and even in that, I am not afraid. I think it's essential. I think that I just happen to live in this time and place, but I think that our souls continue on through all of these different things, and I'll experience the future in the future. But me right here in this time and place is very essential for this time and place. So I try not to worry about what the future holds that way. I think so many things are far more inevitable than we like to believe. And in the same way, it's all about a matter of perception, because the determinism that I mentioned here is also reflected in its own opposition or its own antithesis, its own antithesis, right? In the same way that like the determinism to go in one specific direction, to get everybody on board with one specific movement is there for a time, what that ultimately does, you can't change destiny. You can't change the ultimate divine purpose of existence. So like, even it's kind of like when you watch a car driving by and it has spinning hubcaps, the faster that the car tires spin, that the wheels spin, the opposite direction then that seems to turn. where it's actually turning so quickly in one direction that it just appears to be. That's the difference between what's actually happening and the perception of what's happening. I've said it before, but like we're experiencing time in a linear fashion, so because of experience itself at a core, the measurement of experience itself, these things seem to be taking a long time. They seem to be like there's a process of torture, and then there's a process of freedom from torture. It's all the same thing. It's all the same thing. It's all just one experience that's happening. And that's going to become far more evident in the near future. Those concepts. I don't exactly know what that's going to look like for us, especially as that becomes integrated into the larger society. I know for me, it has allowed me to become a much more caring and just capable individual. And I do believe that that is the natural state and purpose of such experiences. I believe that I was preset to experience certain things prior to the rest of humanity, one, just to prepare myself for it, but also to help prepare others, just by existing through it. And I see us moving now into a place where I've been before, metaphysically, and coming out as a whole the same way that I have through that evolutionary process. So don't fear it. It's a good thing. It's all very good. It's all bringing us to our highest purpose. But we have to just continue to trust that, because it's not always going to look that way. You know, when I was sleeping in a closet for 4 months straight, you know, to keep from being assaulted every night, it didn't feel like that was really a good thing. But years later, that's still something that continues to give me strength and purpose and a sense of integrity in myself, and like the reminder of like how far I've come and why and how much I've been through and how important it is to keep moving forward. So like, just be open to receiving our next state of experiences as well as possible. Be open to being humble enough to recognize the good in all things, you know, without demand, without expectation, without insecurity or like the need for personal validation. And your faithfulness will prove you well in the end, I promise. I promise. But it's gonna be a wild time. We're in for some wild days ahead of us. But it's okay. It's gonna be good. There's gonna be a lot of different things. Who knows who's gonna survive or not? It's not even about that. It's something so much bigger than that. If those things start to trip you up, that isn't where your head needs to be right now. Focus on the things that you can. Focus on the things that do bring you joy, that do bring you peace, that keep you stable, that make you feel truly genuine. Don't keep doing the fake shit. Don't keep making excuses. Well, I need to do this, you know, because this job is what puts the food on the table. Like, the universe will provide. Do what is best for you. You know, well, this is, you know, if I do that, I'll lose all of these different relationships that I've worked so hard to keep or that are so important to me. Like, don't worry about that. Don't live in fear. Trust that the universe will provide for you. Trust that God, the universe, your reality, your highest power, your experience is not going to ask of you something is not truly going to ask of you something that's not going to be for your ultimate best. But you have to see it through. You have to trust that so that as you move forward, it continues to prove itself. If you're looking in every other direction, you'll miss it. So like, keep focused. Keep the faith. Keep moving forward. Be patient with yourself. Give yourself as much love and care as you can. Care for yourself first so that you can care for others better. Do not live in fear. Don't let any of these things rattle or shake you. Hold true to the fiber of your being, and you will be proven to be the wheat, not the chaff that gets shaken away. that's all I got. I'll see you in my next reading.